On the night of June 22, 2025, a heavy silence hung over the occupied lands of Zaporizhia. The countryside, usually alive with the distant hum of insects and the rustle of wind through wheat fields, was eerily still. In the darkness, the only movement came from the shadows cast by the moon, stretching across the empty railway lines that had become arteries for the Russian war machine. That silence was suddenly shattered by the unmistakable whine of drones overhead, a sound that has come to haunt the nights in occupied Ukraine. The mechanical buzz grew louder, echoing across the fields, signaling that something was about to change. Crawling through the darkness, a Russian military freight train, its cars brimming with precious fuel, made its way along the tracks between Lavadny and Molochansk. The train's crew, perhaps weary from weeks of tension, had no idea they were being watched from above, hunted by eyes they could not see. Without warning, the first loitering munition dove from the sky, striking the locomotive with surgical precision. The engine screamed to a halt, its lights flickering out as the train ground to a stop, trapped and exposed. Moments later, more drones descended, each one targeting the vulnerable fuel tankers. One by one, the munitions found their marks, detonating with thunderous force and sending shockwaves through the night. Each explosion ignited a new inferno, turning the night sky a blazing orange. The flames leapt high, visible for miles as thick black smoke billowed upward, blotting out the stars and casting an eerie glow over the countryside. The shockwaves rattled windows in distant villages, a fiery warning that the war had come to even the quietest corners. 11 fuel cars erupted in a chain reaction, the firestorm raging for hours. The heat was so intense it warped the steel rails beneath, twisting the tracks into grotesque shapes and ensuring that no train would pass this way for a long time. This was no random act of violence. It was a meticulously planned and executed strike, aimed directly at the heart of Russia's supply lines. The message was unmistakable. Nowhere, not even deep in occupied territory, was safe from Ukraine's reach. Russian soldiers stationed nearby could do nothing but watch, powerless, as their critical supply shipment was consumed by flames. The inferno illuminated their faces, reflecting both fear and disbelief at the scale of the destruction. As quickly as they had arrived, the drones vanished into the night, leaving behind only the skeletal remains of the train. The charred wreckage stood as a grim monument to a new era of warfare, one where technology and precision could devastate even the most fortified supply lines. The repercussions of the attack rippled far beyond the scorched earth of Zaporizhia. In Moscow, the Kremlin's command was shaken, forced to confront the reality that their logistical backbone was now a target, vulnerable to strikes they could neither predict nor prevent. Ukraine's technological ingenuity, its ability to adapt and innovate, was transforming Russia's vast territory from an asset into a liability. Every railway, every convoy, every depot was now a potential target, watched by unseen eyes and threatened by silent wings. The train, once a symbol of Russian might and control, was reduced to smoldering ruins. Its scorched insignia served as a warning to all who saw it. The old rules of war no longer applied. The fireball that lit up the Zaporizhia night was more than just a spectacle. It marked a turning point in the war's shadowy new front, where technology, courage, and strategy would decide the fate of nations. Responsibility for the strike was quickly claimed by Ukraine's Defense Intelligence, HUR, specifically, a shadowy unit codenamed Kabul 9. This elite group specializes in high-risk missions, blending intelligence and direct action. Their weapon of choice, loitering munitions, drones that circle and strike with surgical precision. The operation required real-time intelligence and deep networks inside occupied territory. Kabul 9's success highlights Ukraine's shift to nimble, tech-driven warfare. These operators are the ghosts in Russia's machine, sowing chaos far from the front. The attack was part of a broader campaign to disrupt and degrade Russia's war machine from within. The destroyed train was a mobile pipeline, carrying thousands of tons of fuel to Russian forces. Modern mechanized warfare is fueled by constant supply. Without it, tanks and trucks become useless. The loss of 11 tankers was a major blow. Such specialized wagons are not easily replaced under sanctions. Destroying this shipment forced Russian commanders to ration dwindling reserves, grounding vehicles, and stalling operations. The cascading effect strained Russia's logistics, forcing reliance on vulnerable truck convoys. Ukraine targeted a critical vulnerability, attacking the support structure rather than the front line. By hitting fuel, they struck a single point of failure with outsized impact. The fireball was proof Kyiv understood and could exploit Russia's weaknesses. The drone strike did more than just destroy a train. It paralyzed a vital railway artery, severing a lifeline that had been essential for moving troops, equipment, and supplies. The devastation extended far beyond the immediate wreckage, as the blast tore up tracks, shattered signaling systems, and left the entire stretch of infrastructure in ruins. In a single moment, a critical node in Russia's logistics network was rendered useless, sending shockwaves through their entire supply chain. Experts quickly assessed the damage and estimated that repairs would take weeks, an eternity in the context of a fast-moving war. Every day the line remained down, Russian forces faced mounting logistical challenges as the painstaking work of clearing debris and rebuilding tracks dragged on. Russian logistics planners were forced into crisis mode, scrambling to reroute vital supplies through alternative paths. These new routes were longer, more complicated, and fraught with additional risks, stretching their resources and testing their adaptability. With the railway out of commission, the burden shifted to already congested highways. Military convoys and supply trucks now had to navigate crowded, exposed roads, making them easy targets for further attacks and ambushes. The resulting delays directly slowed Russia's operational tempo. Armored columns and troop movements were postponed, offensives stalled, and the ability to respond quickly to battlefield developments was severely weakened. The strike created a severe supply bottleneck, leaving frontline units waiting for ammunition, fuel, and food. Shortages rippled along the southern front, undermining morale and combat effectiveness. To cope, Russia was forced to divert precious resources, both manpower and equipment, toward repairs and increased security. This stretched their forces thin, leaving other areas vulnerable and exhausting already overworked personnel. The attack imposed a significant operational cost, throwing Russian planning into disarray. Commanders now had to contend with disrupted logistics, complicated supply lines, and the constant threat of further strikes. This was a strategic victory for Ukraine, achieved not by capturing territory, but by crippling the enemy's ability to fight effectively. It demonstrated the power of precision strikes to shape the course of the conflict. The smoldering wreckage stood as a stark symbol of a new kind of battlefield win, one where disruption and denial can be just as decisive as direct confrontation. The Kremlin's response was predictable: public denial, private fury, and brutal retaliation. Russian officials downplayed the attack, blaming a technical malfunction, while military bloggers sounded the alarm. Moscow answered with missile barrages on Ukrainian cities, targeting civilians in acts of vengeance. Hardliners used the incident to demand escalation and deeper buffer zones. On the ground, security tightened, checkpoints multiplied, and suspicion fell on locals. These crackdowns often backfired, fueling resentment and aiding Ukrainian intelligence. Russia's reaction addressed the symptoms but only deepened the underlying crisis. The Zaporizhzhia strike showcased Ukraine's mastery of asymmetrical warfare. Low-cost drones now destroy high-value Russian assets, shifting the balance without costly battles. Innovative tactics, like smuggling drones in trucks for internal launches, turn Russia's own territory into a liability. These methods bypass air defenses and create paranoia deep inside Russia. Ukraine's focus on drones and creative doctrine is rewriting the rules of modern war. From sea drones to FPVs, Ukraine remains on the offensive, dictating the terms. Ingenuity, not mass, is now the decisive weapon. The Zaporizhzhia strike was the latest in a series of attacks on Russia's rail network, a system both vital and vulnerable. Previous incidents like drone strikes from inside grain wagons and mysterious bridge collapses hinted at a coordinated sabotage campaign. Ukraine's silence on some incidents let uncertainty fester, forcing Russia to guard thousands of miles of track. This ambiguity is a psychological weapon, making every accident suspect. The campaign targets not just military trains, but the infrastructure itself, disrupting both military and civilian logistics. Each attack adds to the cumulative strain on Russia's war effort. Kabul 9's strike was the most visible blow in a persistent rail war. As drones struck in Zaporizhzhia, diplomats met in Istanbul for peace talks, a stark contrast between war and negotiation. The talks yielded only a humanitarian agreement on prisoner exchanges, far from any ceasefire. For Ukraine, successful strikes serve as leverage, proving they can inflict damage deep in Russian-held territory. This military pressure aims to make a negotiated settlement more attractive to Moscow. For Russian hardliners, however, such attacks justify escalation, not compromise. The Russian negotiators' proposal for staggered ceasefires was dismissed as cynical. Each strike strengthens Ukraine's hand, but also fuels calls for vengeance in Moscow. The battlefield and the negotiating table remain worlds apart. The destruction of a single train may seem minor at first glance, just another casualty in a long and brutal conflict. But in reality, it signals a profound shift in the war's dynamics, marking a turning point that reverberates far beyond the tracks. Ukraine has demonstrated it can strike deep into enemy territory, using advanced drones and precision tactics to reach targets once thought untouchable. This ability turns Russia's vast strategic depth, a traditional advantage, into a growing liability, forcing Moscow to rethink its assumptions about safety and distance. As Ukraine's defense industry rapidly innovates, we can expect a surge in drone attacks targeting not just railways, but also ammunition depots, fuel storage, and command centers. Each strike disrupts the enemy's ability to move troops and supplies, creating chaos behind the front lines. The rail war has become a permanent and relentless front, grinding down Russia's logistics and stretching its resources thin. Repair crews work around the clock, but the constant threat of attack makes every journey perilous, and every supply line vulnerable. Russia now faces a difficult dilemma: divert forces to protect its rear areas and risk weakening the front, or accept mounting losses in men and material as the strikes continue. Every decision carries risk, and the pressure is mounting. These relentless strikes shape not only the physical battlefield, but also the psychological landscape of the war. Soldiers and commanders alike must contend with uncertainty, stress, and the constant fear of attack, eroding morale and confidence. In this new phase, Ukraine retains the initiative, driving the conflict's narrative and forcing Russia to react. The ability to strike unexpectedly gives Ukraine a powerful edge, both on the ground and in the minds of its adversaries. The smoldering wreckage in Zaporizhia stands as a stark symbol of a new era in warfare, one where technology, innovation, and audacity can level the playing field, reshaping the very nature of the conflict.